Mark the date. February 13th, 2026 is the moment the history book stopped being written and started being completely rewritten from the first page. Center ice at the Milano Arena looked like a celebration zone, raining teddy bears, thousands of people simultaneously realizing they had just witnessed something that defied every boundary they thought existed. Ilia Malinin did not look winded when the scores dropped. He looked vindicated, like a king finally stepping onto a throne that had been waiting for him since he was a teenager. This was not just a gold medal performance, it was a total system shock, technically violent, physically unreasonable, and statistically overpowering in a way that shredded the rulebook and set it on fire. The old way of scoring figure skating, the old ceiling of what was considered possible at the Olympic level, died the moment he struck that opening pose for the free skate program. 10 years of hype condensed into 4 minutes, and he did not need a miracle. He just needed to be himself, and that turned out to be more than enough to break the entire sport. 4 years ago, they left him at home for Beijing, passed over in favor of safer veteran picks, despite the fact that he was already throwing jumps nobody else on the planet was attempting. That rejection fueled 1,460 days of training, 1,460 days of waking up with something to prove, 1,460 days of building the most technically devastating competitive program in figure skating history. In Milan, he was not just on the team, he was the undisputed main event of the Winter Games, and every journalist from the global press to the Japan Times already knew it before the skate began. He anchored Team USA to gold in the team event earlier in the week, alongside Madison Chock and Evan Bates, but February 13th was never about the team. February 13th was strictly personal business. Snagging the individual singles gold completed the Grand Slam, Olympic title, World Championship, and Grand Prix final all held simultaneously, a combination no skater in this generation has come close to assembling. He blew past Nathan Chen's technical ceiling, bottled Yuzuru Hanyu's star power, and added a difficulty multiplier to both that neither legend could have dreamed of attempting at the peak of their careers. The answer to how he's leaving everyone else in the dust is pure cold math, and if you are his competition, it is the specific kind of math that destroys you psychologically before the music even starts. Every jump in figure skating carries a base value, a score you bank simply for attempting the rotation, and the top-tier competitors like Kageyama enter the free skate with planned values in the 90s. Respectable, elite, genuinely world-class technical content, and Malinin walks out starting in the hundreds, spotting himself a 20-point lead before his blade has made a single cut in the ice. Call it the Malinin buffer, a statistical firewall built from stacking so many high-value quads, including the quad axle, that he has engineered a failsafe that makes him mathematically untouchable on a normal day. In 2026, he could fall once, maybe twice, and as long as he lands the rest of his content, he is still standing on the top step of the podium collecting gold, while everyone else watches in disbelief. His absolute worst day is still better than everyone else's career highlight. That is not an exaggeration. That is what the point spreadsheets actually show when you run the numbers honestly. He became the first human being in history to land 6 quadruple jumps in an Olympic final, and that includes the one jump nobody else on Earth dares to even seriously attempt in competition. The quad axle, 4.5 rotations while airborne, requires a torque so violent and a vertical leap so massive that doctors genuinely argued the human body was not structurally capable of executing it cleanly. Ilia spins at 340 revolutions per minute in the air on that jump, which is literally the speed of a ceiling fan running on high, except the ceiling fan is not also trying to land on one blade. The medical consensus was that it could not be done at competition speed, under Olympic pressure, with judges watching and the weight of an entire nation's expectations compressing every millisecond of that rotation. He did it anyway, did it in Milan in front of the entire world, and the moment he landed it, the conversation about what the human body can physically accomplish shifted permanently and without any possibility of reverting. Every competitor watching that landing understood in real time that the sport they had dedicated their lives to had just moved to a place they may not be able to follow him into. What really terrorizes the competition about his 2026 program is not the quadruple jumps, it is the specific timing of where in the program he chooses to place his most destructive technical content. Any jump executed after the halfway point of a free skate receives a 10% bonus because at that stage of a 4.5-minute program, your legs are supposed to be completely destroyed. Most elite competitors at the 4-minute mark are fighting to survive a standard triple, managing their fatigue, protecting their landings, and hoping their body doesn't give out before the final note. Malinin at the 4-minute mark is executing a quad lutz triple toe combination with his heart rate redlining at 190 beats per minute. That is not elite athletic performance, that is a different category of organism entirely. His core strength allows him to keep spinning cleanly even when his muscles are drowning in lactic acid, which is the physical reality that the Japan Times described as unlocking a new tier of human athleticism. He is not jumping, he is flying, and the difference between those two things is the difference between competing in the same sport as everyone else and competing in a sport that only he currently inhabits.
The real bombshell that dropped in Milan was not even about the quads he landed. It was about the jump he chose not to throw and what its existence alone does to every competitor's psychology. Word circulating before the games was that he had already landed a quintuple salchow in training back home in Virginia, 5 full rotations, a jump that the entire sport had dismissed as physically impossible for decades. He played it conservatively in the Olympic final, sticking to the quad axel to secure the gold medal rather than gambling the biggest moment of his career on a jump with no margin for error. But the fact that a quintuple exists somewhere in his training repertoire, even unconfirmed, even unlaunched in competition, changes the psychological landscape for every skater standing in the same field as him. Kageyama and Shoma Uno are staring at the scoreboard, processing a 4-rotation world, while Malinin is already living in a 5-rotation universe, and that gap is not the kind of gap that closes through hard work alone. He has pushed the boundaries of physics so far that serious sports scientists are debating whether the human body can survive a quintuple rotation, which is a sentence that would have sounded like science fiction 5 years ago. If you focused only on the technical content and missed the cultural moment happening simultaneously, you missed half of what Milan actually represented for this sport and for a generation of new fans. Back in his teenage years, critics labeled him a robot, too much mechanics, not enough soul, a jumping technician who could not match the artistic depth of legends like Yuzuru Hanyu in the presentation scores. Milan buried that narrative so completely and so publicly that it cannot be resurrected by anyone who watched the free skate program without willfully ignoring everything that happened from the opening pose to the final spin. He hit the ice for his gold medal skate in a costume that looked like it belonged on a Paris runway, sleek, dangerous, draped in thousands of black crystals catching the arena lights like stars moving through the dark. He brought a swagger to the ice that this sport had not seen in decades, the kind of magnetic charisma that makes people who have never watched a figure skating competition stop scrolling and pay full attention. He is making the sport cool again for a generation that craves pure, bleeding-edge athleticism over tradition, and the cultural reach of that shift extends far beyond anything a gold medal ceremony can fully capture. He has signature moves in his arsenal that exist purely as demonstrations of dominance. They carry no point value, they earn no bonus, they serve no competitive function beyond communicating something specific to the audience. The raspberry twist, a horizontal aerial spin that looks like something out of a science fiction film, is his way of telling the judges and every competitor watching that he still has gas left in the tank after all of that. He is so far ahead on the technical content that he can afford to burn energy on moves that score nothing just to show everyone in the building exactly who owns the sport at this particular moment in history. That is not confidence. That is a statement delivered publicly at the highest stage the sport offers in front of the entire world watching on broadcast and streaming simultaneously from every time zone on the planet. He has bridged the gap between machine precision and human charisma in a way that figure skating has genuinely never seen. The technical output of a computer running at full capacity inside the body of a rock star. He became the first skater in years to become a household name among people who could not care less about figure skating, and that kind of cultural crossover is worth more to the sport than any single performance can quantify. The vibe inside the Milano arena when those scores dropped was unlike anything this sport has witnessed in its entire competitive history across every era and every generation of champions. It was not a victory lap, it was a coronation, the formal and public recognition that a new age had begun, and that everything which came before it now belongs to a different chapter of the story. The era of polite, graceful skating, performed within understood technical boundaries by athletes who accepted those boundaries as permanent, has ended, and it ended on a specific night at a specific arena on a specific date. His rival is not the guy in the locker room sharpening his blades and reviewing his program scores. His rival is physics, and in Milan on February 13th, physics absorbed the loss and had no response. Every competitor who stood in the same Olympic final understood that the gap between themselves and the gold medal was not a gap of effort or dedication or even natural talent, it was a gap of category. He did not just win the event, he demonstrated that winning the event and competing in the same event are two different experiences when one of the participants has relocated the ceiling to a place the others cannot reach. The legacy question around Malinin is not about whether he's the best active skater. That conversation ended the moment he landed the quad axel in international competition for the first time years ago. The legacy question is about where he sits in the permanent historical record alongside Nathan Chen, who defined technical dominance for one era, and Yuzuru Hanyu, who defined artistic transcendence for another. He took the best traits from both of those legends, built on top of everything they established as the outer boundary of what was achievable, and then added a difficulty multiplier neither of them had access to. Chen's technical ceiling has been blown past. Hanyu's cultural magnetism has been matched and arguably exceeded with a younger and more globally connected audience than the sport had ever cultivated. The Grand Slam, Olympic gold, World Championship, Grand Prix final, all simultaneously, is the formal credential, but the real credential is what he did to the sport's concept of its own limitations. He proved that impossible is a word used by people who have not yet done the math, and the math he is currently doing in competition belongs to a version of this sport that the rest of the field has not caught up to yet. He is 20 years old, he is Olympic champion, and he is already in a training environment where the conversation about what comes next includes a jump that the sport declared biologically impossible for decades. The quintuple salchow sitting in his back pocket, practiced, reportedly landed in training, deliberately held back from competition until the moment is right, is the ghost in the machine for everyone chasing him. They are competing to close the gap on his current level, while he is quietly preparing to move again, preparing to extend the distance before they have finished covering the ground he already gained in Milan. That is the specific psychological horror of facing an athlete who operates this way. You are not just behind, you are behind and he is already accelerating in a direction you haven't started moving towards yet. His success in Milan was never just about a gold medal or a score on a leaderboard. It was about rewriting what the human body can do when someone refuses to accept the existing boundaries as permanent. He showed the world that the human spirit does not have a ceiling, it only has new altitudes, and the altitude he reached in Milan will be the starting point for everything that comes next in this sport.